Squares say 5 feet, hexes say they're smarter, but I say give me a ruler and a dream. Today, we're diving into movement, math, and mess with Dungeons & Dragons combat maps, and why you might just want to chunk out the grid system and go full Warhammer mode. You ever notice how D&D minis sit on a neat checkerboard of squares, each square representing 5 feet? Easy, right? No. But here's the kicker, those diagonals. Going 5 feet diagonally should actually be around 7 point something feet by math. But 5e just hand waves it. The rulebook even says diagonal movement sacrifices realism and shakes smoothness of play. In other words, every diagonal step is just 5 feet. Suddenly players are doing mental gymnastics. Is this diagonal move 7 feet? 10 feet? Many DMs just fix this by alternating 5 and 10 feet costs. The first diagonal is 5 feet, the second diagonal is 10 feet. So if you move 2 squares, it equals 15 feet. This is the 1 by 1.5 trick, roughly mimics, but this is a lot of fuss for every diagonal step. Grid square basics. So in the standard 5e combat, we say 1 square equals 5 feet. A walking speed of 30 feet means you move 6 squares. Simple enough, right? But diagonal rule, the diagonal is just 5 feet, is not realistic. In practice, moving 2 squares diagonally costs 10 feet by the book. Even though in a straight line, mathematically wise, and I have public school education, so here's your math, right, equals 7.07 feet. That means diagonals are slightly cheaper than they should be. Roll20 form, that basically sum this up. Counting diagonally at 5 feet each lets you cover as much more ground than walking ortho John ally. So, as one poster put, it simply fixes every other diagonal step should count for double. 4 diagonals becomes 5, 15, 20, 30. Like giving up on actual geometry, naturally some players get frustrated either by blindly following the 5-foot rule or they do mental math. So what's probably the simplest answer is Hex Grids, right? Enter the Hex Grid. On a hex map, every move from one hex to the adjacent hex is the same distance. No diagonals, no weird counting. You just move hex to hex. Think about it like a honeycomb, 6 equal directions, 1 hex, 5 feet of space, end of story. This fixes diagonal problems right out. As one veteran noted, hexes give a closer approximation to real distance, because now there's no wonky diagonal measurements to worry about. If you move 10 hexes, you've gone exactly 50 feet. No debate. Even if you make something like a spell radius that's 10 foot, hits all the hexes within 2 moves. That's why more elegant than eyeballing a circle and squares. Now for some of the drawbacks of hexes, right? But hexes are not all sunshine and rainbows. The toughest part is map making. Our dungeons and houses are full of straight lines, straight walls, and right angles. No hexagonal patterns. A fellow DM pointed out that a square grid are cleaner for maps. Hex are often look off or fake for a dungeon because the walls ended up jagged. You literally can't draw a perfectly straight line with hexes without looking like it's all bumpy. Checkered floors, tile patterns, straight corridors all line up perfectly on squares, but not on hexes. But on the paper, they are wobbly. In practice, when used to think about 90-degree turns, not 60-degree wiggles, aligning hexes on a grid is so annoying that you need a PhD in hexagon geometry. While hexes solve movement math, they make dungeon layouts awkward. Many DMs end up using hexes on wilderness and travel, but not in walled areas. I do prefer, how I like to DM is I prefer hexes on outdoor maps and traveling maps, but when it comes to dungeons and buildings, it's gotta be square. All right, I wanna do kind of like a pro-cons recap here. When it comes to realism, squares are easy to run, but easy to cheat for distance. Hex scales movement with every step of the same actual length. Right? Ease of use. Squares, everyone already knows it. It's less mental math once you take on those weird other rules. Hexes, some relearning is needed, but you'll never have to ask, is this diagonal 7 feet or 10 feet? The answer is always just one hex. When it comes to map making, squares perfect flat for dungeons. Straight walls, cleaner lines. Hexes great for organic wilderness and draws up a nifty world map, but not so great for interiors. Official content, Wizard of the Coast Adventurers and art are all on square maps. Official distances and rules assume 5-foot squares. Adapting those hexes can be fidgety. Player comfort. Most 5e players have never played with hex combat grids. Switching can confuse people in the short term, even though veterans of the games like Battletech or old school D&D might like hexes. But let's take an example from other games, right? So, for context, Pathfinder Edition 1 and 2, the games most D&D gamers also know, likewise use 5 feet square grids for combat. Hex grids historically were used on older D&D for overland maps and not tactical dungeon fights. So 5e square grid tradition comes right out and early. I think hexes are more wargame-ish or exploration maps. As I said in the beginning of this video, not all of us use these maps for every encounter. Generally just for big boss fights. But in those boss fights, if you like to put a lot of terrain out there and you're actually calculating for like hitting from the side or sneaking up, using that rogue to sneak up behind to get their sneak damage. So, square or hex, which team are you on? In the end, it often comes down to taste, complexity versus realism versus mode. So I basically say all that to say, because when in doubt, whip it out. Imagine a world without either of them. And just whip out a ruler and break into full Warhammer mode and give 6 inches, aka 30 feet of movement, fudge the whole grid rule system, go old school war gamer, and whip out that measuring tape. It's certainly less fiddly than calculating diagonals, and though it might be confusing to let your elf rogue, who might have to learn inches instead of squares, 1 square equals 1 inch. So at the very least, I'd make a good mic drop moment, or as a YouTuber, and say, why use a grid when you could use a ruler? And with that, go forth, roll some dice, whether it be on squares, hexes, or with a measuring tape in hand. All right, that's going to be it for today. Thank you for watching. As always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell for all notifications for this channel. YouTube thinks you will like this video right here. If you would like to subscribe, click this button right here. And if you'd like to hit my Instagram and see all the stuff in between that I'm doing, hit this button right here. And I'll see you in the next one. And as always, every stroke of the brush and swing of the blade adds character to your miniature.